Hey, welcome to the Strong Roots podcast. My name is Kristin Hill, and we are so excited that you're tuning in today. Our prayer is that you would move one step closer to Jesus through this series. So go ahead and check out this next episode. Hey, Strong Roots, welcome back to the Parenthood season. I'm here with Pastor John, and today we're talking about relationships. We'll be hitting friendships and romantic relationships, but I'm just going to start us off with, what do you think our kids are viewing about relationships through our marriage?
Well, I think that's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head. Our marriage is probably the biggest thing that is preparing them for a romantic relationship later in life. And I will say, as a parent, you're probably praying that your kid has a great spouse as a Christian parent. I mean, that's like one of the big prayers. Like, I've been praying for you since before you were born. When your kid meets their spouse and it's a good one, like that's what you say and that's what you want. Is the power of prayer important in that? Yeah. But as a parent, your primary job isn't just to pray, it's to prepare, right? Like if you want a house that's a dream home, you pray for it, but it's not like God just plops it out of the sky. You also prepare for it, right? And that's a huge deal. When it comes to mate selection for your spouse, oh my goodness, I hope you are preparing them for it. You know, and the way that we do that, like you asked, is through our relationship.
Right.
We model it for our kids. What are things that we do?
In our marriage? I think we practice healthy conflict resolution in front of
our kids, right? We want them to see each other fighting in front of our kids. And it's great when you have your kids there. For Isabel's old enough now where she'll actually contribute and be like, hey, wait a minute, you said this other thing. You know, and sometimes she'll come in on mom's side, sometimes she'll come in on dad's side. But I appreciate that. You know, and she feels safe enough. We don't yell at each other. We don't whatever. We don't hoot and holler. And having
it's
kids
usually
there.
Not about the kids either.
No.
We do that privately.
Yeah, we do conflict about the kids privately, of course. But, you know, conflict about, you know, typically it's I hurt her feelings. We do that in front of the kids, you know, and that's a healthy place. What else do we do at home to prepare our kids?
Forgive each other.
Forgive each other. And we show them what healthy reconciliation, what healthy compromise looks like, admitting we're wrong, like that's a huge deal. And then another thing, you do this with Eldon and I do this with the girls, what do we do?
Take them on dates.
We take them on dates. And this is a huge deal. We start this young, 3-4 years old. We start taking the kids on dates and we're training and preparing them, right? The mate selection phase is a short phase in life, but it's a critical phase. And I want to teach my kids how to have a godly, gospel-centered mate selection period in their life. Right. And so, you know, for Eldon, he opens the doors for Kristin. He asks her questions about herself. He leads the conversation. And what was that one time? He said something to you about a date and you almost ended it. What did he do? You tell him.
He told me that he didn't want me to tell anyone that we were on a date. And I said, if you ever go on a date with a woman and you tell her that it's a secret, I'm like, no. I was like, you always acknowledge a date if you're taking a woman on a date. You let everyone know that it's a date. And like, this date is ending if you're not going to acknowledge me in front of the Dairy Queen person.
That's right. And what he was doing, you know, and I think that's a bad player tactic today is not being clear with the girls that they're with. Yeah. And what Kristin was doing was training him to be specific about what he's doing and what his intentions are. And I think that's something that's lacking in men today, but my son's not going to be that way. And you know what? He's going to do great at mate selection. Women are going to, you know, enjoy the fact that my son is super clear about defining what it is that's actually happening. That's what a great leader does anyway. But that's training your kids for that. With my daughters, you know, I train them not to prattle on about themselves the whole time, to ask me questions. I ask them questions. I train them how to evaluate what a good date and bad date is. You know, if I sit there and I'm on my phone all the time and not paying attention to them, is that a good date or a bad? It's a bad date. It's a bad date. You don't want to go back out with that guy again. We talk about that. We talk with our kids all the time from a very early age. I'm drilling it into their minds. My daughters, what are the traits that you're looking for in a man? And they will be able to tell you. You can ask any of my daughters. Number 1, loves God. Number 2, has a vision for their life that they want to be a part of, right? I mean, if the man doesn't know what he wants to do with his life, don't date him.
Right.
He's not ready. He's not ready to lead you, right? What does he want to do with his life? Like, you knew what I wanted to do when we were dating, and I invited you to be a part of that picture, right?
Right.
She signed up to marry a pastor. She knew what that was going to look like. I told her, hey, this is what 5, 10, 20 years are going to look like with me. This is kind of how I can visualize that. And I got to invite you to do that. Do you want to have people at our house all the time? Do you want to be a hostess? Do you want to have to do podcasts and lead a women's ministry and do all these things? Because marrying me, that's what you're signing up for. That's the vision for the life, right? So I tell the girls, make sure he's able to do that. And then number 3, can he provide? Right. And if he can't provide, don't be with him. Eldon, you need to love the Lord, have a vision for your life, and provide before you get serious about dating a girl. Those are really important things, right?
Right.
We're training them to have a vision for mate selection, right? And then we talk about, are you who the person you're looking for is looking for?
Right.
Like Eldon, daughters, like there's not a lot of guys in our community who are young, who have a love for the Lord, a vision for their life, and the ability to provide. And there's going to be a great deal of competition. There's going to be a lot of other girls that like that. And you're all very beautiful and whatever, but are you going to be able to get a guy like that?
Right.
And if you can't, what can we do to get you to a place where you can? Like,
right.
What part of your character needs to be refined so that you will be captivating for a person like that? That's a huge deal. That's a huge part about relational conversation with kids. And again, it's not something that you talk to your kids about when it's like, oh, they're getting to be dating age, so we got to talk to them about dating. No, we're preparing them now, 3, 4, 5 years old, talking to them about this. This is how you steward somebody's heart. Mom and dad, like, this is how we romance each other. This is what you'll do someday. We're casting it. This is what godliness looks like. This is how, you cultivate a woman's heart, Eldon.
Right.
Big deal.
And I think something that we've done that was really important is communicated our mistakes in our past relationships.
Oh, yeah.
Not only in our marriage, but before we got married. I think we're very open with our kids about the mistakes that each of us have made in different ways, so that I think it's really easy to view your parents as perfect and think it's unattainable, and we want them to very much know we are two imperfect people who are choosing to follow Jesus, and I want them to learn from our mistakes so they can be wise without scars.
Absolutely. And it's hard to look at a kid and say, hey, your dad's experimentation with pornography has brought a penalty into our marriage and our intimacy in the following ways. And your mom's, being sexually active with other men prior to our marriage, and you should see them. Like, their eyes are like this, but they hear it. And they, for my daughter someday to hear her mother talk about how that broke dad's heart. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And she's got some cheap-witted redneck who's trying to get in her pants. Mm-hmm. And she's going to think about what her mom, you know what I mean? Like, we've had that conversation, and it's not just saying, don't do this, save yourself until marriage. It's like, hey, I know what the cost is to this, and I'm not going to do it. And for our girls, they're not going to see this. So we got each of them from a friend, each of them a ruby.
Right.
And when they get their first period, we're going to give them that ruby and a little necklace.
Become women.
When they become women. The first period red, okay, it's not good. There's no correlation there. But we want to get them a precious gemstone and have it mounted in a necklace. And my hope and prayer is they're going to be able to give a gift of purity to their husband. And I want their husband to be able to put that in his wedding ring and say, my wife gave this stone to me and no other man. Mm-hmm. And if they, unfortunately make a bad choice and don't, like, hey, I'll tell them when I give it to them, like, I'm taking it back. Mm-hmm. If you can't be a steward of this, and unfortunately you're not going to be able to, but I want you to give this to your husband. Right. I want him to have that. And dad didn't have that, but, someday, and, I wasn't able to give all that to your mother either, but you're going to be able to do that to your kids. So,
Absolutely. And God uses rewards for us. He talks about storing up treasure in heaven, and it's just a glimpse of trying to bring heaven to earth for our kids to help we need motivation to do the right thing. And so switching gears a little bit more to friendships and those kind of relationships, I think a huge part of our family mission, vision is sharing the gospel in all relationships. How does that look in our family? How should that look in our family? Yeah. And how do we do that?
Well, every meeting conversation that we have before the meeting, Kristin will ask, what is the purpose of this conversation?
Right.
To our kids, to us, and they know. To share Jesus with people. We want to see people far from it. We want to see this person, or we want to see someone grow in their faith. They know that every interaction, every conversation, even if we're not having people over, we're going to the lake and we're going to spend a day as a family. What is the purpose of this day before we get out of the car? It is to point each other to Jesus, to love one another more, and to love God more. By the end of the day, that's what we want to do. And sometimes we'll even ask, like, how do you love God more today? Or what was your high and low about God? Those are all conversations that we have. And there's purpose in every friendship. There's also purposeless friendships. And they're super unfulfilling.
Right.
And Kristin and I, we looked at our life and we looked at these friends that we spent so much of our child with, 3-4 days a week with, going to their house, playing with them all the time. We don't talk to them anymore.
Right.
But we do talk to our siblings. We look at our teammates. I mean, both of us were super, involved in a lot of sports. And we look at our teammates. We don't hang out with any of them, ever.
Right.
But we do talk to our siblings. And so for us, like, the priority with friendship is we want to have them love God, to be missional, reaching people far from God. That's still a call, so we still do that with their life and with our lives. But then we also want them to really invest in each other more than just their friends. And that's a really big deal. One other issue that I want to cover before the end of this, if that's okay, is the actual dating thing. And I have been, in professional ministry since I was 18. So 19 years that I've been doing this, coming up on 20 years. And I was in youth ministry for almost a decade and had the joy and sadness of watching lots of families do this great and do this wrong. I have a pretty good idea of how I'd like to handle dating. And I am not opposed to kids having romantic relationships when they're younger necessarily, but I think that our heart and romance is like gasoline on a fire. Like, it's super easy to light that and to have it just way out of control. And God gave us these powerful hormones. And I think pretty much up until 10 minutes ago culturally, dating and romance was something that parents did.
Right.
And I think that it should be something that parents are involved in today. And so I prepare my kids ahead of time. I don't just pray, I prepare them ahead of time. Like, your mate selection is something that your mom and dad are going to have a part of.
Right.
And if you're interested in a guy, that's great. Let's have him over. And he'll hang out. You're not going on dates when you're, 16 years old without us.
Right.
But we'll go for a day to the fair. We'll bring him to the lake. We'll talk with him. We'll get to know him. And we'll let you guys have conversations that are one-on-one with us sitting on the other end of the boat, if that's what you want to do. But we're going to be there, and we're going to be a part of it, and we're going to evaluate it together. And a lot of people ask, like, how is that going to work? And I'll definitely say, like, we're involved in the process. And even after they're out of our house, I still want us to be involved in their mate selection process through conversation. And that happens through fostering safe, intimate, real relationships between the kids and us. By not freaking out, by training them to have those conversations with us in every other place in life. But like all things, if you want your kids to be in a gospel-centered relationship, it's more than just prayer, it's preparation. So
absolutely. So what's the challenge that you want to leave them with?
I mean, with parents, kids of all ages, just remember, you're not praying for a mate and for good friendships with your kids. You're preparing them for it.
Right.
And if your kids don't have those things, likely it's because we as parents aren't training them and preparing them for it. So what do you need to do to prepare your kids? There's a lot we talked about in this conversation, but what do you need to do to prepare your kids to have gospel-centered, godly relationships in their life?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm excited to talk about technology next time and look forward to talking to you then. Bye. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to follow us on our other social media platforms. We don't want you to miss out on any future content. Thank you so much again, guys. I hope you have a great day. And I want you to know I am personally praying that your roots stay strong.